We are back. Another fishing podcast has risen from the dead. What do you say, Pete Wagner? Can you believe it?
This is perfect timing. You can't really fish right now.
Yeah, there's definitely, you can fish, but it takes like dressing up like an astronaut, and it's a little bit more involved, right?
Fishing is a battle.
Fishing is definitely a battle. But we are back. It's 2021, for goodness sakes. Let's light this candle, Pete.
Let's do it.
This isn't another fishing podcast. This is another fishing podcast.
First of all, I'm still trying to manage this mic right here, and it's weird because I hear you in these headphones, but the mic itself, my mic, I can't hear. So I'm looking at the levels on my sophisticated Ecamm Live software here, Pete, and I can see. That's the only way I can see if I'm getting a little overmodulated, a little excited.
And so, I'm actually in a home recording studio, which would seemingly be professional. But I'm just, I guess I have a mic, which is kind of professional, as you can see. But
it's very professional. I just put a lower third title on you, too, right now, nice. So the people watching the video podcast can see.
Well, one unprofessional thing about my studio that I didn't consider is that through the wall to my left, there's a giant furnace that intermittently kicks on and kicks off. But it just turned on, so can you hear that furnace?
I can't hear it.
That's good.
That sounds pretty good, man. You got your place completely professionally rigged because you're an audiophile.
I'm just
soundproofed.
I make music in the meantime. It works out pretty good for the old podcast, But there's really no soundproofing. 2 kids. I already had one try and come in because she's like, I want to be on YouTube. But I had to. So I locked that door and the door into here. So I have a 2-door barrier right now. So that may or may not hold. We'll see how it goes.
I hear you. Well, let me just tell you, I think your set looks great. It's fantastic. The lighting is spot on. It looks awesome. So
kind of shockingly professional, being I threw it together in just the last 5 minutes. But I would like to analyze your backdrop because yours is way more professional than mine.
Well, okay.
So you got a Minnesota sign, which I really dig.
Thanks.
And then sort of a throwback arrow that's kind of like a drive-through arrow to like a 50s restaurant or something.
Yeah, and it's lit too.
Yeah, it's really classy. Like you had you ran power back there, huh?
Yeah, you see this? This is funny. I love doing this kind of nonsense. You see that right there?
See what?
So the people that are just listening to this podcast are hating life right now. But yeah, so I got the ham. You see the ham sign behind me?
Yep.
So behind the ham sign is the actual power that feeds, and
right.
And you see I got the wood planks, and
yep.
on in between the wood planks, I'm hiding that wire that goes to that sign. So there's an outlet right there behind the ham sign. Wire comes, I'm trying to use my, wire comes, wire comes through there all the way, this is hard, all the way into the light. It's all smoke and mirrors. Television, video is smoke and mirrors. So whenever you turn on your tube, remember what you're seeing is not reality. That is my little speech there.
Well, for those listening, so you have a Minnesota sign, a arrow that has a burnt out light, which kind of adds to its charm. A hams from the sky, from the land of sky blue waters. They don't make hams anymore, right?
They do, but but you know what I mean. Like, I long for the days when hams was straight out of St. Paul, Minnesota, and they filmed all their commercials in Itasca County. I'm talking like 50s, 60s hams. That's the nostalgia that I'm trying to go for.
You can drink it warm and then go home with your wife beater on, and
that's right. Like
your wife would have supper waiting for you.
And if you're watching, just so you know, if you're watching the video podcast and I'm looking down, it's because my computer is below the frame here, and I'm looking at Pete. That's why if you see me looking down, that's why I'm looking down. Just so you know, that's where my computer is. I'm looking at Pete.
Greg's looked down. He's looked down at me for over 40 years now, so that's the tradition we want to keep alive.
Oh, that's absolute nonsense. No,
and
absolute
by the
nonsense.
way, so if you're listening to this, obviously you can hear this podcast, but just so you know, if you go to where, you can actually watch us talk, which is even more exciting.
Right. So, okay. So let's get into that. And I'm really multitasking here. I'm actually going to add a lower third on me right now, Pete. I'm getting better and better at this, I feel like. But Greg Underdahl, another fishing podcast. This is a professional deal, okay? Not really. We don't want to make it too professional. That's it. Like, it's like a nail in the coffin for internet stuff. Have you noticed that?
Yeah.
Like, it's better if you're not professional on internet stuff.
It's professional while you're drinking, like as professional as you can be while drinking. That's kind of I mean, we've never done a podcast that didn't involve alcohol.
Well, right. Did you see what I'm drinking? You did see?
You got the Coors Light. I got Shiner Bock.
Much more high.
I'm so happy I can find in Minnesota now. Straight out of Texas.
Yours is a little bit more gourmet than mine. I love Shiner Bock too, by the way. That's a great beer. Great beer.
There's a little German community in Texas. They brew this stuff, but in this little town where I work, I asked the guy that owns the liquor store, I'm like, can you get Shiner Bock? Because I'd seen it around. He's like, yeah. I'm like, what? So then I ordered 8 cases. So I have 8 cases of Shiner Bock. So
there you go.
I'm ready for the podcasting season.
Oh, man. Well, what's exciting too is that I actually go, when I'm filming bass fishing tournaments, Major League Fishing, Bass Pro Tour events. A lot of them are in Texas. So, yeah. In fact, the last tournament before COVID hit, we're going to talk a little bit about that too, because what a year it's been. We're now in 2021, but we will talk about 2020. Good riddance to that year. Worst year potentially ever in the history of modern humanity. Although World War II was pretty bad. I mean, let's be honest. World War II is really bad, right, Pete?
Depends on where modern humanity you're talking.
I don't know.
You go back about 30, 40 years, you probably run into the same scenario, but for sure 60 years.
Yeah, for sure.
I think I'd take this pandemic over World War II, but anyway.
I can't even remember what the heck I was talking about, but no,
You were going to get to the point of where this podcast is broadcasting and how you can get to it,
okay.
Et cetera, right?
Something like that. It doesn't matter. We go off on tangents all the time, so we'll figure it out. I think I was talking about Shiner Bock. The last tournament before COVID hit was in. Wasn't I talking about that? Oh my goodness! I probably need to. I probably drink too much.
No,
is this a sign that I'm drinking too much?
I think it's a sign you haven't drank enough. Thank you. Greg is now having a beverage for those listening.
So basically, the last tournament before everything shut down last year was in Texas. It was actually in Lake Fork for me. So I remember having a Shiner Bock. I think this is where the tangent that I want to go on. So tons of beer down there. And when you're down in Texas, I'll never forget this. So we went to this, you're talking about German. There's a lot of Germans migrated many, many years ago to Texas.
Especially Central Texas.
Right. So we during this tournament, but right as COVID, I mean, it was March of last year, and right as COVID was just starting to impact things, I was there trying desperately to finish filming this tournament before everything shut down. Some buddies and I went to this German restaurant before everything was shut down. And even that seemed a little bit kind of crazy. People were really afraid of this thing, but we're like, well, we're going to go out. We're have something to eat. So,
details were sketchy at that point. Everyone was kind of like, eh.
Yeah, we go to this German restaurant and it's awesome. Probably the best German food I've ever eaten, like bratwurst and all kinds of, German food. But I remember having that Shiner Bock and then also just thinking too, wow, these people, I really felt bad for them because they didn't know, as in the restaurant business, they didn't know what was going to be happening. And we were the only people in the restaurant in Texas, right. In that restaurant. Because it was things were just people were terrified.
It was like that. It was like an earthquake had struck out at sea, and before the giant wave was coming in, the ocean was sucking the water out before it was coming back in to knock everybody over like bowling pins for 9 or 10 months now, wherever we're at. Yeah,
no, it's been so bizarre. But let's talk about what we'll go into a little bit more about 2021. But let's talk about where in the heck we're going with what we're doing here. And I want to first just kind of give people an idea why of, and this is primarily me. This isn't on Pete. This is me and my neuroses, that we did this kind of 180. Another fishing show is still around. Another fishing podcast is still around. Honestly, those will not die. Those will never die. They're never going to die. Don't worry. I know we haven't done anything, for a while. That's changing. However, when I think it's pretty clear now to me that when we started this thing, and this, I take the responsibility for this. I thought, and I always do this. This is part of my one of my issues. I have many issues, but I think, oh yeah, we can do this, we can do this, we can do this, we can do this. Oh, and then we'll do this. And meanwhile, it's like, dude, you have a job that actually pays money.
Like you can fit into one lifetime.
Yeah. And so I got to be really careful because I think I'm blowing out my audio here, Pete.
All right. You gotta just dial back a little bit.
Yeah,
too.
I just keep moving it backward.
Looks like that dial's cranked down there.
I think it should be. I thought I brought the levels down on it, but
all right. I should handle it, Mike. I can't see it that well anyway.
So anyway, so basically, what we did. So I when we started this endeavor, it was another fishing show. We had this idea for another fishing show, right? And this was an idea that Pete and I thought of. The first thing that it was like back in 2010, 2011. 2011 is when we first filmed for another fishing show.
That's crazy.
That's how long ago it was. We first did our first episode, actually posted it onto the internet. That was 2015. And I think it was fair to say that none of us really knew what was happening on the internet. We knew that, wow, this is amazing what's going on. We want to be a part of it, but we didn't really fully know just how things were building, and how to really take advantage of that, and all the different.
And we were almost in the mode of selling a show because we're old versus attacking the World Wide Web. You know what I mean?
That's right. Absolutely.
We didn't have an internet mentality. We had a mentality of where would we fit in on television because we recorded in Fishman with our VCRs. That's how old we are.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. We weren't. We were old school too much.
Yeah. So as we were sort of figuring out a strategy, like YouTube and fishing on YouTube was starting to take off and, go sky high like everything else does on YouTube. And we were just kind of left holding our crotch and realizing later, oh, that would have been a really good idea, Yeah,
what
do you do? What do you do?
I mean, it seems to me that, I have a tendency to miss the ball on a lot of things. There's a few things that I've been, lucky about. I feel like I've been really lucky with getting in on, Major League Fishing. That's probably like, wow, what the, they've been giving me a lot.
I don't look back on it with regrets by any means, because the whole idea when we were doing those shows, like, well, we didn't even know what we're going to do with these things, but it was like a diary of our fishing life. I love the idea that I'd be sitting in a nursing home at some day, and maybe you're still alive, or maybe I'm still alive, and I'm watching this and getting a big kick out of it because I can't leave because I'm just wearing a diaper and I'm bedridden.
All right, yeah, no, it's
you know what I mean? It was almost like a photo album for our fishing adventures.
Well, I just wanted to have that uncomfortable pause there. I actually
I know you did.
I know I completely understand.
Also, there might be
saying.
pauses due to you directing while you're podcasting. So
yes, that's how talented I am. I'm actually directing this. I'm switching, as the technical term is called switching. I'm switching camera angles. I think that's a technical term. I don't know. Oh my gosh. My dog, look at Cinnamon wants to my See, this is how real we are.
I could see in the gap behind your curtain there. I could see him run through.
My little dachshund loves to go out the side door here in the basement, This is like her favorite place because she actually has the more room down here to go out. We've shoveled it better down on this end of the house. So,
because being a wiener dog in the winter in Minnesota has its problems.
Yeah, I
had a similar dog.
Yeah, she's very low to the ground, very small, low to the ground, doesn't have much hair. Winter is very tough for this animal.
Have you ever tried to take a leak with your junk buried in snow before?
I don't know what you're talking about.
If you're a wiener dog, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, no, I've never had that problem. So thankfully,
we don't think about that stuff, but that's what it's like being a wiener dog.
So she's very, she's very particular. I mean, you know these dachshunds, and she's a miniature dachshund, so she's super low, and she can't stand being outside too long. And when she has to go, she barks, and she really had to go. So I'm sure she's laying a big loaf out there right now.
Nobody minds.
Yeah, so this is the beauty of the internet. Again, like we said, we don't want to be professional, right?
Right.
Yeah.
No. It's easy not to be.
In fact, there's a cat over here about to tear some crap up too. So we got a lot of fronts here going on. But so basically, we started another fishing show. That was the main show idea that we had. We wanted to do a show that was relatable, very down to earth. Local fisheries, not so worried about trying to go to places that are far flung, and every time you set the hook you catch a big fish and you look like a hero.
You're right. And not necessarily teach anybody anything. That really wasn't part of our theme.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Or to entertain. More to entertain. Yeah,
so I mean, the idea too, I think we kind of felt like those shows were out there, and we were more of like kind of entertaining. I mean, sure, you can glean something from another fishing show, but that's not our main priority. We wanted a relatable kind of everyman kind of fishing show, I think was what we were going for. So we're still doing it. The last one we did was with Pete Wagner, which that was a super fun show, and I love that guy. And I think now kind of knowing how the level of where burnout kind of occurs, especially when you're kind of trying to consider, other responsibilities in life. In fact, a job that actually pays. I kind of feel like we have a better handle on what's doable now. And, it's all about consistency in everything in life. If you want to be successful at an endeavor, you got to keep going at it. And I kind of feel like now, we've got a better plan to do something consistent, and the angling uploaded idea is, you think of a network, so that's what we're on now. So if you angling uploaded, if you want to, our social media platform is angling uploaded now. You'll find our another fishing show shows on there, episodes. We'll have the video podcasts on there. Yeah, we'll have a part of the Angling Uploaded Network will also be our audio podcast. So it's basically, I really think our flagship is another fishing show. And we're going to do those on a quarterly basis. So we're going to shoot another fishing show episode in the winter, one in the spring, one in the summer, and one in the fall. And then we'll air, that's an old school term, but we'll post upload quarterly. So we'll upload another fishing show, winter, spring, summer, fall. I think it's doable. And then
it is what it is.
It is what it is.
But that's our goal.
That's our goal.
We're not promising anything. And then also, you'll be filming when you're out and about, and I'm hoping to be filming when I'm out and about. For those of you that don't know, I'm in the grocery business. So since COVID hit, although it's been pleasantly busy, it's been somewhat of a nightmare for the last 9 months too. But I'm next in line for vaccine. That's good news, I guess.
Okay.
But so I haven't done much filming at all. Everything's just been shelved for me, and I didn't even hardly get the boat out this year. It's kind of a frustrating year for me. So
the podcasts that we're doing right now, we're going to do those weekly. Obviously, with Pete's schedule and sometimes my schedule, it can get kind of hairy. But I think we can get a podcast done weekly, and maybe we can do more than that. But right now, just weekly. And so the Another Fishing Podcast is kind of a companion, not kind of, it's a companion to Another Fishing Show. And then we'll also, like when we're able to, we can just do just a more, basic, not as involved as the Another Fishing Show episodes, but just, fishing video that we upload to YouTube if there's a cool bite going on somewhere around us. We can do that. That's the plan. Also, right over there, I just, I've had it for a while now, but I just filled a tank, this 90-gallon tank that I bought like a year ago. I'd like to do just because it's something that I think is cool. But have you ever, how many times have you're walking through Cabela's or something, and you're like, what in the hell, does that lure look like in the water, Right. So I like the idea of doing some videos where we're showing how underwater lures look, or how lures look underwater is my point. And I'm going to do some vertical like ice fishing lures, It's basically the tank is set up as a vertical setup, it's more of like a square.
Yeah, you can't go across. You can't go.
I mean, I could. Yeah, so I really think it's going to shine as like drop, if you're drop shotting lures like that. Any vertical presentations, ice fishing, of course, is vertical. So I just think, and there's so many interesting new ice fishing lures out. It'd just be cool to show people what they look like underwater, under different retrieves, and especially like these little panfish plastics that they have out now, more and more in ice fishing. There's these just panfish plastics, these tiny little plastics that guys are using now that have really come up in the last few years. Very, detailed, and I think that'll just be that would be cool to show those, how they work
it's
underwater.
It's a kind of perfect setup for ice fishing, especially,
Yeah. So.
And you could always drop a glob of crawler down there and just stare at it too, just to see what goes on.
Yeah, what does a crawler look like when it's impaled on a hook? Is that what you're saying?
I don't know. I've seen it above the water. I've never seen it below.
Also too, it's like like what is especially for like lake sturgeon fishing, right, where you just constantly, you're just putting a mess. There's nothing at all sophisticated about lake sturgeon fishing. A mess of crawlers on a hook and then letting it sit there on the bottom. I mean, honestly, it'd be an interesting shot. At least it would be a good shot for stock footage.
And maybe you should tell everybody about your other purchase, which was the Another Fishing Show purchase of all time.
Well, I think it's important so that people realize this. When I've complained about guys with their glitter boats and their boat that costs more than their mortgage,
right?
I guess I haven't made it clear enough that I'm not really. There's a part of me that is very much that person. My last boat I had was a 21-foot, 71 mile per hour bass boat,
You can make fun of yourself just like you make fun of other people. Nothing wrong with that.
That's right. Self-deprecation is my is one of my real talents. But yeah, so what Pete's getting at is, and that was actually gonna be the last. I got notes here, Pete. That was actually gonna be the last thing that I was gonna talk about. But let's do it right now.
Pull the Band-Aid off, man.
So in 2020, I was actually going to. I was planning on buying a boat, right? My whole thing was like, okay, and I know this sounds like I'm a spoiled brat. I don't mean, I'm very sensitive to sounding like, this is a very first world problem, what I'm about to say right here. So if I was trying to pay off my pontoon last year, right? And I was like looking, I'm like, okay, I have a pontoon, right? It's
Your
the
first boat.
My first boat with my wife. We bought it together. It's like we live on a little lake here. And it was our first purchase together. It's like a pontoon. I love pontoons, man. I love to, have a good time. Pontoons are a great time. And I love being on the water. I love having a great time. I mean, what else do you need to know? So anyway, we bought this pontoon together, my wife and I. I don't like having multiple debts, like toy debts, if you will. It's one thing to have a mortgage. That's an understandable debt. A car loan, understandable, okay? But I kind of consider a car loan a toy loan, and then a boat loan is also a toy loan. I don't want to have multiple loans packed up other than my mortgage, you know what I mean? So I only like to have one other debt kind of hanging out there, especially with what I do. I mean, it's as a freelancer, it's kind of, you never know what could happen. So I got to be a little...
It's feast or famine for you a lot of times.
It can be, but these are good times, surprisingly, actually.
Ironically. Very ironic good times.
So the plan last year was to pay off, before COVID and anything hit, the plan was to pay off the pontoon. And then COVID hit. And I was like, luckily I was able to pay off the pontoon, but the next plan was to, I paid the pontoon off, now I'm going to get a fishing boat. Well, COVID hit. After basically COVID hit, I was lucky enough to be able to still pay the pontoon off, but I was like, in no way am I going to be getting a fishing boat now with all this uncertainty, And I held off. Luckily, shoots came back online like 2 months later. And then I was like, well, and then the schedule, like more shoots were getting scheduled, and I was like, well, maybe I'll just see. Maybe I'll do this. I started looking around for boats, to buy a boat, and there was nothing in the inventory, dude. No, so I wanted to get. So my first bass boat was actually a nitro. I used to work for Bass Pro Shops. Bass Pro Shops is the parent company of Tracker Boats. Tracker Boats and Tracker Boats and Nitro are owned by Bass Pro Shops. I've had a ton of experience in Tracker Boats, Nitro boats, right? So I felt comfortable with that brand. I own a Tracker pontoon. You don't have to. There's fishing boats have gotten so expensive. Trackers and nitros are the more inexpensive option. So I was looking for a Tracker Targa V18 walkthrough, and I never in a million years would have thought I'd be getting a deep V walkthrough boat. It's actually my least favorite design of a fishing boat, but I couldn't, my favorite boat is a bass boat, and I'm like, I can't do the bass boat route because it's so limiting. Here in Minnesota, there's so much different fish to go after, and you can't go after sturgeon or catfish very well in a bass boat. So I'm like, I need a boat that can hit a lot of different things, it's not so species specific that I can, and that's why I went with a deep V Tracker Target V18 walkthrough. I went with a walkthrough. I was looking, the walkthrough. I've seen guys that basically have taken a walkthrough boat, and with a walkthrough boat that has a windshield, you're able to make the boat enclosed with a bimini top and then side curtains, and you can completely get away. Not completely get away, but you're much more shielded from the elements. And lake sturgeon fishing, cat fishing. There's a lot of things that we're going to be doing, Pete, that I just was like, that's an option. I got to have that option.
And you're in Minnesota. As crazy it is to think, you're like, I want this to be a 4-season situation because we have access to the big river, which has some open spots due to some power plants, and we can push those, in November into December as far as we can, and then when that bails out, we can get over to the river. So essentially you're looking at a boat you'd be using 4 seasons for any scenario.
Right. So to make a long story shorter, to make a short story longer, which I typically have a tendency to do, especially when I'm drinking. But what happened was I got into a position, I could see that things were looking actually pretty good with being able to afford a boat. And I looked around, and all of the boats, surprisingly, like there was no inventory. There was no boats on the showroom. Like everybody was buying boats, Pete. Everybody was buying boats summer of 2020.
The outdoors were chick before that, and they went crazy when there was nothing else to do. Everyone experienced this. If you're in the outdoors at all, anywhere you go, whether you're a biker, or whether you're a hiker or a jogger or whatever it was, people were out in droves because there was nothing else to do.
Yeah, it was super surprising though, because I was thinking, wow, the economy is tanking, and I just would have never thought that people would be. It was a weird
byproduct. There was like two economies going on. Like some people were doing well and making the most of it, and then there was a lot of people that were sinking down and had no way to get out of it. It was just an odd and brutal year for a lot of people, but you ended up in a situation where you could buy a spectacular boat, and you did.
Yeah, so what happened is there was nothing. I couldn't buy this boat from a showroom or anything. They were all out, so I had to get it built. I ordered it in September, and I got the boat in the beginning of November. It was funny because I went out. This time, like fall in Minnesota, you never know when ice is coming, So I was like in a frantic dash to like get the boat broken in. If you don't know anything about like purchasing a new boat, you've got to what's known as break in the motor,
which is so obnoxious that this has not been figured out.
Well, there's a lot of there's a lot of obnoxiousness in this. Like, I mean, and I'll say this.
Can you imagine if you bought a Beamer and you had to break it in?
Well, number one, I wouldn't be buying a Beamer. That's more something my brother would buy. But exactly.
You know what I'm saying.
Yes. No, I know.
Like if you walked off the lot with a $50,000 car and they're like, all right, you're going to have to speed up and slow down for how many hours was it?
Yeah. So for
it was like 12 hours or something?
It's 10. The break-in process is basically 10 hours.
Right. So our thought on that is, well, like you haven't figured out something that you can mount a boat motor to, and it just simulates somebody breaking in their motor into a bucket of water or something. Why hasn't this been figured out?
Right, and that's what it is primarily. You're just to break in the motor, you've got to adjust your RPMs on the motor, different ranges, right? But you got to do it for 10 hours. It's like, guys, please, right? Let's do it right now, Pete. Let's go ahead, make an appeal to the outboard manufacturers.
Boat manufacturers, outboard manufacturers, hear us, hear fishermen. So here's a guy like Greg. He wants to go fishing with your boat. Do you know what it's like to get a boat? And yours happen to be pushed to fall. Maybe not always the case. A fall day is like 3 hours in Minnesota, right? Maybe 4 hours. I don't know how much daylight we have, but it feels like that. Not only that, but you're in your new boat and all you want to do is fish. So could somebody pay a high school kid to hook this motor up and then move it up and down in some sort of steady pace? All his job is to break in motors, and then you can advertise, we're a company that cares enough to break in your motor so you can just head right out onto the lake and fish, Think about having that as your catchphrase.
Totally. And let's be honest with you. I don't think it would be that much for the manufacturer. I mean, it's basically like it's putting the thing in a tub of water. I mean, I know this is a little
pool, your Bass Pro pool that you've got in your factory.
Right. And you basically you have some kind of device or a young child, that's working the throttle, that's alternating the RPM ranges.
It's got to be automatic. I mean, there's no way you couldn't invent something that does that,
Right. Through artificial intelligence.
a robotic arm that does this in like 15-minute intervals. You know, I mean,
Pete is doing, just so the people that are listening to the audio podcast, Pete is doing a little bit peculiar kind of gesture with his forearm right now.
It's a throttle.
Oh, okay, right.
But it's so ridiculous. Like, it drives. And the other question is, like, what percentage of new boat owners, because you know how dudes are really following through with those instructions? Like, they're like you said, your neurosis you will follow that to the T because that is your lifetime purchase. Most dudes are 30 minutes in and like, I am not doing this anymore, dudes. We are going fishing right now. You know, whatever it takes.
So
but I wonder what that percentage is of guys that ignore it, and they're the ones where their boat will never break down for the rest of their life. You know, they just live their life not even paying attention. You know.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. There's a lot of those guys out there. I am not that guy.
No,
you know,
and so you're by the book.
And I just, especially like you're buying a new, you know, like a new boat. One of the reasons why I'm kind of like I won't buy a used boat ever again, is because I had a boat. The last boat before this one I had, fishing boat. I bought it, and I bought it stupidly, honestly. It was a used boat, used bass boat, used Champion 21 foot with a 250 horsepower. I mean, this thing was decked out.
And that thing was above your pay grade in those days, too, wasn't it?
Well, I was paying more for the boat than I was in rent. My monthly payment was more.
That seems right to me. I don't
for
know.
my boat payment than my rent payment.
Right.
And
in Oklahoma, that seems right.
But I bought that thing. I bought it, and I was like, I got a really good deal on it. I'm like, I should have been like, this is too good of a deal,
Right.
You know.
But just go for it because I'll be fishing. I don't want to think about it.
Yeah, it had hull damage, crazy hull damage from the previous owner, but the hull damage, it sat on the bunk boards of the trailer, so you could never see what happened to the lower hull. You know And so I bought it without never knowing there was, according to I'll never forget this when I got a call from the boat, the repair place, or not the repair, I'd taken it in. I was selling the boat because I was going to go freelance, right? So I took it into a marine dealership before I sold the boat, or a repair place or whatever.
Right.
I just wanted them to look through the boat just to make sure everything was good before I put it on the market, right?
But you had never detected a problem.
No, not really. No,
Nothing ever rose a red flag the whole time you had it, so it wasn't even a problem to you until you had to sell it.
Right, and then that's when they called me back and they said, I don't know if you realize this or not, but you've got $10,000 worth of catastrophic hull damage. And I hadn't owned the boat that long.
That's
not
my
even a
favorite
year.
band. Catastrophic hull damage. Have you heard those guys? They're amazing.
Is that well, no one goes on tour anymore, but do they have a YouTube channel?
They will be. Soon they'll be on tour with a YouTube channel. Anyway, sorry to interrupt.
No worries. So no, I couldn't believe what I had heard, and so I had to. I luckily everything worked out, but I learned my lesson there that I just don't trust them. It's one thing for a car, but for a boat, the whole hull of a boat.
Yeah.
You know, and how some anglers fish too, even a very expensive boat. I mean, I've seen these guys,
Right.
dude. They will beat the shit out of these things,
And that's magnified with fiberglass too. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
That makes you. That's the extra wary part of that purchase, which you've learned the hard way. But
Yeah, so I'm just not going to. If I am fortunate enough to be able to purchase a used boat, I'm going to do it, a new boat. I just don't. I don't like to. There's so many things that you can hit when you're, when you're fishing. And I don't want to do that. I don't want to go that route anymore.
And if you want it to, this boat could last you the rest of your life, which it'll be in perfect condition whether you sell it or die with it. 'Cause
Well,
that's how you take care of your stuff. But
yeah, I mean the thing that kills me though is that on our last, so we went out, we got made fun of for it, but we went out on the St. Croix, which we live in Minnesota, Pete and I. If you're just tuning into the podcast, we live in Minnesota, not far from Minneapolis. And there's an incredible fishery. Again, I'm getting too close to this mic.
You get fired up, man. We used to have this problem because I used to edit these podcasts. You would get passionate, and I used to call you Redline when I was editing. I'm like,
You did?
No, Redline's getting excited again.
Oh God, I didn't know that. My wife, I'm going to let my wife know that. She'll start calling me Redline because
she's heard you Redline.
Well, way too many times to count. She's like, "Can you just bring your voice down a little bit?" That's become a new thing. I need to work on my whatever. Sorry, I got to remember to switch you here, Pete. Which I am. I've actually been doing pretty good at this, switching to different camera angles here. But anyway, this St. Croix River is just this astounding body of water that we have near us that is full of lake sturgeon, and it's becoming better and better. It's well protected, I'd say. Wouldn't you say they're doing a good job with the protecting?
Really protected, and I think it's been protected for a long time. That's the thing, because these fish live to 100 years old, and when you start protecting fish, you have to wait 30 or 40 years before you feel the results of it. And I think it's been a 20 or 30 year thing. I have no idea if that's true, but I think they've been pretty strict about it for a long time. Part of that because it's sort of a federal protected waterway, so I think it gets attention for that respect. But it's like. And the other weird thing about you having to break in your boat was we had a perfect fall where you had a warm day in November in the 60s to break in your boat. And we're like, we actually have a shot to take this thing out on the Croix. So by then it was getting cold, and we started investigating the idea of, well, is there ice or isn't there ice? And you brought it up on Facebook and got lambasted like, you idiot. And our backup plan was to go to Red Wing on the Mississippi, where there's a power plant keeping the ice away. But it turns out you drove past the river and it was wide open, so to speak. We found out later not as wide open as we thought, but at least a mile or two of it was available to us. But eventually ice blocked us from the spot we wanted to be at. Yeah,
so it was just good that we were able to get out there, though, and
just to go fishing together, which we hadn't got to do at all,
Yeah, so it's exciting, but I will say that trip was kind of bittersweet because when we came back to the ramp in the evening, I don't know, you remember the current?
Yeah.
Strong current there rubbed, and I'm trying to load the boat onto the trailer, and the current kind of took the boat and rubbed me along the dock, and now there is a white scrape mark along the side, the starboard side of my beautiful boat.
You mean when you took a shot at the dock and kind of missed it?
Yeah, and it's
that first one,
and it's great, but yeah.
Yeah, it sucks. And there oddly was a lot of current. That specific landing, which was in Prescott on the Mississippi side, it's like directly in the current. Usually you get a little bit of a break, but that one, first time coming in on that one. But this is part of owning a boat, and you know this. And this is why I love owning a beat-up old boat. Mine is also a walkthrough. It's a 16-foot walkthrough where you can walk anywhere in the boat and not run into anything because there's nothing in the boat, including a console.
Right.
But the fear of having a nice boat is the same thing as fear of having nice anything. When you get that first ding, it hurts a lot.
Yeah, and that's that's the drawback of having a new boat. So it's worth it. It's worth it, and I knew this would happen, and it's all process of getting this thing into. Here's the thing. I'm not going to be one of these guys that's not going to fish out of the boat. You know what I mean? I mean, I'm going to fish out of the thing. I'm going to fish it the way it's a fishing boat, for God's sake. So that's one of the things that drives me crazy. Some of these guys get these boats. The thing is, too, there are a lot of guys out there that have very nice boats. I remember back in the Bass Club days I saw this. Very nice boats, like top-of-the-line rigs, dude, that are terrible fishermen. Terrible fishermen, dude. Yeah, the boat does not mean, like, you can have the nicest boat. Some of the best fishermen have crappy boats, dude.
Yeah.
So I'm not even, but getting that, getting to the point where you have a new boat to a seasoned boat is just, it takes some time, you know?
Yeah. You got it out of the way. And by the way, did you, to what extent did you try and polish that mark out of there? Did you really go after it?
No, because here's the other thing that's kind of funny. I haven't told you that. Maybe I did tell you. So, and this is something too that, you know, we can go off on like boats, and we've already a little bit about like this, the fact that you have to break them in, how nonsense that is. But, so, and you just don't see this. And I think boats are overpriced. And you don't see this kind of nonsense in when you buy a car. Like, for instance, my boat, so there's some fit and finish issues. And I understand I'm not buying the most, the most expensive fishing boat out there. I'm buying a boat that I can afford, right?
It's not
and so it's not. Yeah, it isn't a cheap boat. It's still not a cheap boat. I mean, honestly, I've never paid this much except for my mortgage.
Right.
And I'm a little concerned that my wife is hearing all this right now. But
is she? Say hi to
I mean,
Jessica.
I'm sure she's hearing it. But no, everything's fine. But
I think I hear her weeping gently. Is that your wife?
Possibly. Yeah, she could. She could be crying into a pillow right now. I'm not sure. But one of the things, so the boat is actually in the shop right now, right? And the reason is like that last St. Croix trip that we had, there was water, like, and I've noticed it. So I've had it out 4 times since I bought it so far, right? And everything's frozen now, with a few exceptions, but I've had it out on the water, and there was quite a bit of water coming out when I pulled the boat plug, you know? About a half a bucket full up to a 3/4 bucket, I'd say, full of water. I'm like, that's a little too much.
Yeah.
And so I took it in, and they're looking at it. There could be hoses, you know, or for like the live well or something that's the issue. I don't think it's anything serious with welds or anything, but whatever. I want to take it in. They'll address it. It'll get taken care of. It's under warranty.
Oh, warranty's huge.
But the funny thing about it, dude, though, it's like the and I told you this, like
I know exactly where you're going with this because it disturbed me. It still does.
Yeah. So the hole where, you know, the boat plug goes, you know, to when you drain your boat, I put my finger in there,
right?
And
by the
there's
way,
I could feel like just random loose nuts
Hardware.
and bolts and everything. Like they didn't shot vacuum out, or maybe they came out of something, and I don't know, or the guys that are building the boat just drop them and they're like, whatever.
We're busy. But I pull into the landing, and I'm like, I haven't seen this boat yet, and I'm honking my horn. I'm like, woo woo, you know, look at this, we got a real boat, you know, finally. And then one of the first things you show me is, hey, so you see the hole where I pull out the plug, and I'm like, yeah, put your finger in there. I'm like, what? I don't know. And I put my finger in the wrong one first. And I'm like, I don't understand what you're talking about. And then when I put it in the right one, when I put it in the right one, which is a common issue, there is nuts and bolts loosely laying in the very bottom of your boat, your new boat.
Yeah, it's like would you ever see that? I mean, honestly,
how was that acceptable in a boat production? There's no scenario like we have to compare it with cars, because it's like if you buy a car of the same value, you know, and you turn on your heating vent and it like throws bolts in your face or something, you're taking that car back, you know.
Yeah.
Well, the only reason you're taking this boat back is because it's going to take you 9 months to get another one, you know.
Well, I mean, yeah, no, exactly. And if anything, you know, you could make an argument that boats are like there should be even a higher standard of safety, you know,
right.
and quality control, you know, because you're on water. I mean, we can't breathe underwater. We need to stay afloat. Everything's got to be like, you know.
Right. It's a good point.
And yet we find in the marine industry, there's a little bit of some nonsense going on here. I think the reason why, Pete, is honestly, they don't get called out, and they just it's like anything human nature. Well, if we're not getting called out for it, we're just going to keep doing it.
Apparently, they're going to let that slip by, but I mean, quality control is quality control. But
I don't know, but it's
the funny part was we got in that boat, and you're desperate to open that sucker up too. You're like, I'm going to open this baby up. I'm like, I want to see how fast it goes. You know, it's got a big engine on it, and there's like ice flows coming down the river at us. We got that baby going 50 miles an hour.
52.
We're watching for ice, you know, but we've never exceeded, 15 miles an hour in my boat, so it was pretty exciting to rocket past our old record.
I mean, think about it, Pete. Like all of the new water we're going to be able to fish in a day now. You know,
Yeah,
we can actually.
I was shocked at how quickly we got to our spot because I was like, I'm pretty sure this took me all day to get this location last time I fished.
Because we did a fair amount of fishing on the St. Croix out of your boat, and it was a wonderful platform. We had a great time out of it. So yeah, it's a little different now. We have a 200 horse that can, we can try a few more areas that won't pan out.
And for perspective, I had a 20 horse, so and
Right,
still do have.
So what's the math on that?
I don't know.
What's the difference? Yeah,
I get the feeling a 1984 horse is a different size horse than a 2020 horse, also. But maybe I'm wrong.
4-stroke, baby. 4-stroke, which I don't even know what that means. I mean, I know it's a 4-stroke, but I don't really know what a 4-stroke means. I know it's better on gas, I guess, but when you get to 200 horse.
Quiet. Yeah, it's a great engine. The whole thing is an amazing setup, but it's kind of ironic because we always, for another fishing show, it was all about being in a crappy boat, We kind of enjoyed the idea that we were just average Joe fishermen, but we're going to be pretty fancy when we mount some cameras on that boat, I was scared to smoke a cigar in your boat that day, and you were like, "No, it's fine. Just ash over the side." And I was like, "I don't even feel comfortable right now smoking a cigar in this boat."
We're gonna fish out of your boat still. I mean, your boat is. I mean, I love your boat. Your boat's got a ton more history, and I'm not one of these people that think that again, like it's the fisherman that's in the boat.
I know where you're going with this. But it's going to be hard not to take your boat out. And I am not complaining because this was the first time in I don't know how many years I just showed up with a tackle box and a fishing pole. You know what I'm saying?
I know.
I wasn't there early to get my boat in the water. I wasn't there late to take my boat out. Like, it was like a vacation for me. I'm like, oh my God, this is like having a guide. This is spectacular.
No, I'm excited about it because, I mean, it took me I used to live in Tulsa, Oklahoma. I started a freelance career. I moved back to my ancestral homelands. But starting a freelance career back in my ancestral homelands took me a little bit of time before I could get to a place where I felt like I could afford another boat,
Yeah. And the other thing is, like, dependability was always an issue with my boat. I love her. But I can't tell you the amount of trips I've, been on where I was relying on the old Minn Kota battery to get me back to shore.
And I love it. The one Minn Kota battery.
Right. Well, I've got, a battery on the other side of the boat for my electronics, which I've had to utilize before to get back to the dock. But, yeah, so it's going to be nice not having the dependability thing. I mean, for my end, and you're going to love taking out your boat, but for me, it really is like a vacation, especially now when it's crazier than ever and I'm not able to, spend any time with my boat anyway. If I can just like throw some gear in the car and zip to wherever you're dropping the boat, this is like a revelation for me. It's too good to be true.
It's definitely a new era is upon us, and yes. I'm very excited that now we have 2 boats and a kayak. You've got kayaks too, so we can definitely do the kayak thing as well, which is important.
And but I think let us be very clear. Just because we're in a fancy boat doesn't mean we're not buffoons.
No. That needs to be emphasized.
Right. If anything, having a fancy boat heightens the possibility of a major situation, a major go wrong. Now it's like we've tripled, quadrupled, maybe 10 times the possibility of something terrible happening. Because you have a fancy boat.
Well, I don't know if I keep seeing bolts and stuff on this, loose bolts everywhere. We might have plenty of content. This boat might provide plenty of content and storyline potential.
Did you have your boat in the shop and ask them to address that part of it?
Yeah. So I took it back. one of the reasons too I bought a tracker is because I'm not far from Cabela's. Bass Pro Shops bought Cabela's a few years ago, so their whole boat service, all that stuff is there, super easy. And I took it there after kind of just that St. Croix trip, and I was like, I just want this addressed, and and then I also said, also, can you like suck out with a shop vac those like just loose bolts and screws down there, and he was like,
did they seem shocked by your request?
No, unfortunately. And maybe that's the problem. Again, we need to change the marine industry. I think this is highly common.
So they were like, oh, yeah, that's pretty standard. We end up shop vacing a lot of boats out of the new boats.
They said, like, it's just like these guys, they're building these boats. And it's, when you start building a boat, especially when you're when you're building on the layers and the subfloors and everything, there gets to be a point where everything's finally just encapsulated.
Right. I feel you're making excuses for it.
I am.
Some drunk guy kicked over a toolbox, and you're just
yes.
it's a lot of work building a boat, so we're just gonna have to give them a pass on that.
That's what's happening. These guys, I'm hoping it's not actually like nuts and bolts that are coming loose that are holding critical components of the boat together. Just are falling out. I'm thinking it's just a guy from Missouri. This is where these are made. I've actually filmed in the factory before when I used to work for Bass Pro Shop.
You didn't see anything suspicious going on?
I saw plenty. But again, I'm not very smart. I still, decided to go with this brand.
Right.
Just kidding. But no, it's so. Or am I? I don't know. I'm not kidding about not being very smart, but. But the thing is that I think it's primarily what's going on here is it's just when they start to build the subfloors, they drop a bolt, and they're doing stuff probably pretty quickly. They might have a screw in their mouth, and it drops out, and they fall, and they just keep going,
Right.
That
it's
is
like I'm making $15 an hour. I'm not going to worry about that screw.
Yeah, that's my hope. You know what I mean? That's my hope.
Right. Well, but it's good that you brought it in and like sort of created some sort of accountability there. But it was kind of a frustrating thing. So did they have an answer about why it was maybe taking on more water than you thought?
They thought that it was probably related to like live well hoses, and like bilge hose, all that kind of stuff. Like hoses is what they think was going on there.
So they didn't fix anything. They just said this is probably the issue, or what?
I haven't got it back yet. Sorry.
Oh, it's still there.
Yeah, sorry. It's still there. So I'm going to call them tomorrow and
that's good.
See what's going on. So
at least you're going to get them to kind of comb through it and look for anything.
Honestly, I want this thing when we're ready to. We're planning on fishing. So we live not far from a warm water discharge on the Mississippi River at Red Wing. It's pretty well known. You can fish all winter long because of the wonders of nuclear energy. They use the water as to cool the reactors. It comes downstream and it keeps a big portion of this section of the Mississippi River open. And you can fish there all winter long. So Pete and I have done that before. We did another fishing show episode, night fishing in the wintertime, which sounds crazy,
In
Minnesota. But you can catch some very big walleyes doing it. So that's something that we do want to attempt, maybe at least try to attempt once this year, maybe more than that. But yeah, I want to fish with it this winter. And then especially when we have ice out, I just want this boat to be ready to flip and go. You know what I mean? So, all right.
Greg's got a new boat.
I got a new boat, yeah. So here's the thing. So ice fishing season is upon us, Pete.
It's here.
It is here. It just kind of sneaks up on you. Before you know it, everything's frozen. Mm-hmm. And then the shelters are popping up on area lakes, and I'm kind of a big wimp. I think you probably identify with me here. Is I kind of wait until January until I start ice fishing.
I'm generally driving to my spot. That's when ice fishing starts for me.
Yeah.
But I have the benefit of trout season, which just opened up because I'm in southeast Minnesota and the streams are open all year. So like today, fabulous trout fishing day. Sunny, warm, calm. So that always buys me enough time to let ice get thick because I'm like a 1.5 foot guy. I'm not like 6 inches of ice guy.
Yeah, me too.
We're just a little nervous in that world, which I think is, caution is a good thing there. I love fishing, but,
Yeah, and I mean, I won't go through it here, but it's, I lost a friend a few years ago to an ice fishing
right.
accident. So I'm not an early ice guy. I don't need to worry about, I got to be the first out there and all that nonsense. I'm happy to start ice fishing in January.
And it's here.
What's that?
And it's here now.
And it's here. So, we basically, like we were talking about earlier, so our ice fishing is primarily, it's St. Croix, it's Lake Sturgeon. This is what I'm most looking forward to, this ice fishing season. So it's the Lake Sturgeon deal on the St. Croix River, which is so unique. I mean, I kind of pinch myself just thinking how lucky we are to have that near us, And then to catch, I mean, you caught it. How big was that one you caught? What was that, a 60-incher that you caught through the ice, or how big was that thing?
The one on video, yeah, it was 60.
Yeah. So to be able to catch these huge, like, prehistoric fish through an ice hole is super
three
unique.
Ice holes because you can't fit them through a regular ice hole.
Yeah, 3 connected ice holes basically.
Just great.
Yeah. So just the idea of that, I'm looking forward to doing the Horseshoe Chain of Lakes channel catfish, which is a body water that is essentially a flowage near me. It's about an hour from me. And a flowage means that they kind of, in one area of a river system, they dammed it, and it kind of flooded lakes that kind of joined together, and that system has just got a ton of channel catfish, and they bite readily through the ice, and there's a ton of them. So really looking forward to doing that. And then have you done that yet, Pete, at all? Have you done that?
We did, but we were on the clock, ironically, because we spent the whole day doing a podcast at your house. And then we zipped up there and got there like 2 hours before sunset, but I only had like 2 or 3 hours. And I left before we caught anything, and because it was like 3+ hours home for me from there. And you caught some fish later. But what we have to do on that one is commit to an evening out there,
Yeah, for sure.
Whether you're crashing in a vehicle or whatever you gotta do, just be out there all night and just make an evening of it,
Yeah, so that's as far as this ice fishing season, I'm looking forward to those two, particularly those, as far as species, sturgeon and the catfish. I think it's super.
And the irony of that is, as a Minnesotan, we've talked about this before, the fact that, I mean, there's a lot of fishermen that will roll their eyes until they roll right out of their head. If you say, I'm only going to be fishing for cats and sturgeon
I know.
in Minnesota, and it's so great. I don't even care. I mean, and I like fishing for walleye, and I kind of get off on panfish, but if you're not eating them, panfish has a limit of excitement. Pike and tip-ups, all that stuff is fun, but for some reason, man, that I don't even know if you consider sturgeon a rough fish. I think that's just a special thing to be able to do. And then the cat thing is something that, we didn't even realize you could catch them through the ice till 3 or 4 years ago. And that the idea that we can go catfishing in the winter is spectacular. Flats are out of the picture, but channels, I mean, those hardy fish, it's a northern catfish, and you can go catch them through the ice. What a cool thing, I love it.
Yeah, channel cats are really, in certain bodies of water, are better for channel cats. But again, we're super fortunate to have a really excellent winter channel catfish fishery not too far from us. So,
right.
And yeah, the flatheads go very dormant in the winter, but thankfully the channel catfish don't as much. In fact, they're very active. I would say they're very similar to walleyes as far as their ability. They don't, they bite very well under the ice.
Yep.
So you have a cool trip that you're potentially planning. Are you doing that for sure? That's the BWCA deal?
I'm leaving in 2 weeks. 2 weeks from Thursday. And I'm going to arrive at I have a cabin at the very tip of the Gunflint Trail. If you don't know where the Gunflint Trail is in Minnesota, if you go all the way north, and by the way, this is the only county in Minnesota that doesn't have a COVID case, which is kind of cool.
Wow.
You go through Duluth, follow the Lake Superior all the way to the end of Minnesota, that tip in the top right corner. The Gunflint cuts in and ends at basically Ontario, Lake Sonagana, which my Boundary Waters video from last year was started on this lake that's on Angling Uploaded. And it's lake trout opener. I'm bringing the whole family. And speaking of fish that bite readily through the ice, lake trout, and I've never done it before, is one of the finest ice fishing fish there is because they perk up on days that it's 5 below, no clouds and sunshine, No
kidding.
So, and you use artificials. You just use giant jigs, just like you do in the summertime. You drop it down there, you bank it on the ground, you lift it up. Sometimes they hit it on the way down, sometimes they hit it on the way up. So I've got some days I'm going to be backpacking into the Boundary Waters. Just today, a new shelter arrived for me that I can put on my back. I went to a minimalist approach for my ice fishing because I've had this huge clam and this big sled, and I had a flip over or flip up. What do they call those shelters anyway? And I realized the clam is great, but it's too big to keep warm. The flip shelter was great, but it's just huge. You got to fit it in the car. It's tough to drag. So now I've got a small insulated shelter, but I can stand up in it, and I have a tiny heater. My fish finder is tiny, AAA batteries. I bought it to canoe with in the Boundary Waters, and it works amazing for ice too. So everything I'm doing is getting tinier. So I got a snowmobile rented for a full day. I'm going to be sledding into where I can, and then Boundary Waters, there's no motors, so you have to hike. I'm catching a ride from a dog sled, which is pretty cool.
Nice.
12 dogs, 12 huskies are going to be pulling me on a sled and then bringing me back. I mean, how often do you get to do something like that? And then I have a guide for the first day because I want him to show me the ropes, kind of just let him – he's bringing out the whole family kind of a thing. So – and I'm going to he can write me up some spots, I'm hoping. But, yeah, I'm going to be – and if I catch – if I'm catching walleyes or panfish or whatever, I'll be happy because I'm sending up a big shelter right in front of my cabin. But then I'm cruising around basically just looking for lake trout because I've never done it before, and they are big up there and they are fun. Those are big fish. It's almost like – you can't just use your normal walleye rod for it. I got a couple of stiffer rods showing up in the mail here. So, yeah, if you want to talk about a way to help winter pass by in Minnesota, that's a cool thing. I've never went up there in the winter. It's always a summer thing for me. So I'm thrilled of just being in the wilderness, looking at the stars and spending every waking hour sort of. I got some snowshoes. I'll be hiking on snowshoes. So either I'm going to have a heart attack or I'm going to catch a bunch of fish. We'll just see how things work out, I guess. But
maybe both.
Maybe both. Yeah, maybe maybe if I have the fish first and the heart attack later, that will work out for me, But I'm geared up to fish, man. Like I really have been under a steady amount of stress and work and, not really having a lot of days off. And then the family, too. Like they're just burnt out from being here. I have 2 kids and my wife, and they only see each other, especially for the last month. For a while, they were hanging out with other people, but for the most part, we're just kind of laying low and hunkering down. And they're, at their wits' end. Everyone's going to school at home, and so we're just going to go far away and then just get we bought tons of clothing that's going to keep us warm. I have battery-heated socks and battery-heated gloves, and we're just going after it. It's going to be I think it's going to be a great way to experience what I think is the best part of Minnesota, and it's not even close.
Yeah, I hear you. It's beautiful up there. You've always been like this amazing outfitter. I remember like the early days of you and I like trout fishing in southeastern Minnesota as kids, man, and you would raid like your dad's grocery store. And you would bring like I just remember, man, it would be like the what was that, silly cheese or the cheese in with the crackers?
Cheese or, yeah.
It was in the it was like aerosolized or whatever, and you put it on you know? And that was
Ritz.
always a staple. You have the cracker, but then like
Right.
just a ton of other just like
always
cool junk food.
The cream corn on the in the can and the baked beans in the can, like right on the grill, and then cook a trout with the skin on it, you know?
Yeah.
We used to just grill out trout, you know, and it was just great. And we were probably just cooking it terribly, but we were just hungry and young, and who cared, you know?
So I have no doubt that you're going to outfit your winter experience up there.
Yeah.
And
I like the idea of going small because you get too big with fishing gear, ice fishing especially. You know, like I think I prohibit myself from going ice fishing because I realize how much stuff I have to grab. But you know, now I've got a sled that's 3.5, 4 feet long, and everything's going to fit in it. One thing I'm not sacrificing is the battery-powered auger.
yeah.
That's fine. I'm going to stick with that big boy. But everything else got smaller for me. You know, I'm just gonna be minimalist Pete on the ice, and I'm hoping that will turn me into a more productive or at least a more active ice fisherman. You know.
Yeah, just make sure. I don't know at that time how thick the ice will be.
Yeah,
but
they're doing pretty good up there.
Yeah, just make sure you bring the extension for your auger.
Oh, that's a good point.
Yeah.
That's a good point. I didn't even think about that. In fact,
Yeah.
I'm going to put that on my list right now, if you don't mind.
Yeah, that could be very disappointing. You know what I mean?
I don't
Like,
think
yeah,
it's
I'm ready to go, and then you don't even you have like an inch before you'd break through. It's so close, but no.
Did you hear about the ice skating? Everyone was flocking up there this winter, like late November, because they never don't have snow, and they didn't have snow. So these lakes you can see in like 40 feet of water
Heck yeah,
have
man.
perfect ice. So it was like an ice skater haven. So all these people are going up there with ice skates, and it was like they were in paradise, you know, which is ironic because I'm like, I can't imagine going ice skating ever, but that's a pretty cool thing to do if you know how to ice skate, I guess, you know?
Yeah, for sure. So, moving on, there's a few things before we wrap up here. I just want to kind of go over as far as the in the world of fishing, some items pertaining to 2020, the worst year in anyone's memory. I think that's pretty common. I think that's safe to say.
That's fair.
Lots of bad stuff happened. We're glad to be past it. Hopefully things will be better in 2021. Actually, I don't know. Honestly,
it's going to be a while.
It's going to be a while, I think. But we lost Ron Lindner in 2020.
Right.
And that happened kind of the end of November, I guess it was, Pete. End of November, beginning of December, around that time frame.
And how old was he?
I believe Ron was maybe even in his mid-80s. I think he around that.
Because Al is 4 or 5 years younger than him, right? He's the younger brother.
He is younger. I'm almost positive.
Right. And for those who don't know, the Linders, you should be ashamed of yourself, first of all. But second of all, they were a couple brothers, came to Minnesota via Chicago and started the fishing empire known as In Fishermen, which was kind of our Bible growing up, teaching us a science of fishing, like the biology of fishing, which that approach had never been taken before. It was like Babe Winkleman cooking bratwurst on his boat to promote bratwurst, and then he was also catching fish. But the In Fishermen boys had a scientific approach to teaching you about lakes and about, bait fish. Like you would learn about bait, which nowadays seems like a normal thing, but in those days, no one thought, well, you can find the fish if you know what the bait does. It's
Right.
good to know what bait does. It maybe isn't the most exciting topic in the world, but it's like, a trail of crumbs that's going to lead you to the fish you're chasing after.
That's right. Yeah, no, I think, I was actually talking about this recently. I think In Fisherman was really a catalyst for us in many respects, that
Absolutely.
really fueled our fire for fishing. At that time in the 80s, it was a very thick magazine, and
Crazy thick. 12 months, too.
and it had incredible illustrations. Larry Topol did the incredible artwork on the cover. Inside, it had these just great illustrations showing you what was going on under the water, but also like the different rigs, different fishing rigs to use, and just incredible, great writing. Still to this day, my favorite writer is Doug Stange. Still writes for In Fisherman.
Brilliant guy.
Brilliant guy.
And they didn't discriminate. Every fish was fair game.
That's right.
They didn't care where you were from or what you fished for. They knew guys like to fish for different things, and geographically they would take anything on in any part of the world, even though mostly it was North America. Doug Stange loved catfishing. When catfishing, even though they call it the most popular game fish in America, which I believe entirely, even though it's hard to recognize in Minnesota, he loved that. He grew up in Iowa and fished in Minnesota, and that stuff he did with Toad was some of the best writing. Like, it just made me want to go catfishing,
Yeah, tell him who Toad is.
Toad was Stange's sidekick. What was Toad's last name?
Otis Toad Smith.
Smith, right.
So Toad was his nickname.
Yeah, and Toad was basically, if you could imagine what a cat fisherman would look like, Toad is like the mascot for catfishing. He was overweight, and he was either missing teeth or had dark teeth, I'm sure he was a smoker. And he was salty as all get out, and Stange just loved him for his fishing knowledge because he had like these instincts for finding cats, which, turned Stange into a catfish guy full speed. And those guys used to go on the Minnesota River. We used to fish for cats and camp overnight just like we did, and spend all their time chasing cats in northern Iowa and southern Minnesota and around the world eventually. But, Toad was one of those guys who since passed away due to his hard catfishing lifestyle, I'm sure, that ignited a fire in me as a young boy when I realized that bullheads were just the start of things, and there was actually some giant, amazing fish to be caught out there that were on the top of the food chain that everybody in Minnesota was ignoring.
Yeah.
It blows my mind. Still, not as much anymore, because I think people find each other now with the internet. You can find your group, so to speak, so it kind of seems like that. Back in those days, we did not know a soul that fished catfish and loved it. You know what I mean?
Right.
We knew of people that caught catfish randomly or were fishing in areas where you would catch catfish, but I didn't know of a catfisherman. That was kind of a foreign idea to me, but I knew a couple hundred walleye fishermen,
Yeah, for sure. Yeah,
so
Toad
was kind of a hero in that sense.
Absolutely. And I mean, the thing is, too, is that, In Fisherman was just so great on so many different levels. And I really, you have to credit Al and Ron for that. Like they just, I don't think that there's ever been anything like that in freshwater fishing, or probably will ever be anything like that again. No.
I don't think you'll see an advance in knowledge, the way you approach fishing, like the way they advanced it. It won't ever be advanced that quickly with that much knowledge again, because now it's all out there,
Right.
But there was a big gap there for a while. It's like biologists understood it, but fishermen, they just went to their favorite spots and fished with stuff. They weren't overthinking it,
Right.
And they changed that game, and that guy is a true hero to fishing, and not only to learning fishing, but teaching responsibility and conservation and educating people that you don't need to keep everything you catch. You got to be smart because you can impact the fishery. Like those guys, you can never give them enough credit for it. Love them or hate them, they own that, and they always will.
Yeah, and the thing too, and I remember asking Pete Mena this on a few occasions. I remember asking him.
Pete Mena, the best muskie fisherman in the world, not in the Wisconsin Fishing Hall of Fame.
Right. Which definitely needs to change, and I think we need to work on that. We've talked about it in the past. Maybe this is the year.
It might be.
But yeah, like he, just I don't know. It's I've never heard, and Mena. I've talked to other people. I've never heard anybody say a negative thing about the Lindners.
Right.
I've never And you do as you know, I mean, I've been doing this 21 years now, you know. You'll hear some negative things about certain professional fishermen, you know. And everything about the Lindners that I ever heard, Pete Mena, said nothing but great things about the Lindners. I just, you know, there's Ron and Al were just so, so well respected and looked up to, and it's sad. It's just kind of like I'm glad Al's still around, and goodness, I hope Al lives for many, many more years. But you know, with Ron's passing, it's definitely an end of an era there. You know,
definitely bummed me out. And the other thing with those guys too, like they weren't associated with competitive fishing in any sense.
So, yeah, it's very interesting in that regard.
Like they had a wealth of knowledge they wanted to share. You know, that was their goal.
And exactly, but they also, I would say, they knew they had a formula, right? They knew they had this thing. They knew there was a niche there that wasn't being exploited, if you will. That's not the best way to put it, but they knew that there was something missing, and they got in there. They did it within fishermen, but the thing with they knew that education. And just done like a high standard of education and of photography. I mean, their TV show, everything had this high standard. You know, I think they elevated freshwater fishing, you know, to a way more respectable position.
Even with that announcer, you know, their voice guy was great.
Which is you know, what's awesome, dude? When you go up to like Brainerd, when you're traveling through Brainerd, you'll hear him.
He's a Brainerd guy.
He's either that area, you know. So you'll hear him doing just like a local like commercial, you know.
It used to just get me so revved up, man. Like we would record those, and I would watch them over and over and over again. You know, just loved that show so much. And recently, I just bought on eBay like that fisherman. What do they call that guide? It looked leather bound, but it was paper. The Fisherman or the Fisherman's Bible, is that what it was called?
Oh, right. Yeah. Are you talking about the Secrets?
The Secrets, right.
What was
they
the
would
name
give
of
it
that?
away with a subscription.
Right.
Then I remembered it. I was like, I wonder if I could find those. And I found one on eBay for like $20, and it's as fabulous as I remember. I mean, it was a disappointment because you would see a picture and you're like, wow, look at that leather-bound, amazing-looking book, and it was basically just a 50-page, you know, pamphlet stapled together. But it was so chock full of information, you know. It really was like, you know, we salute you, Ron.
We salute you. Al. Let's do a toast to Ron.
Yes.
And
off to the sunset.
Rest in peace, Ron. You were very important to us.
Yeah, that was a huge bummer. I texted you a picture of you in his parking spot because we drove through Brainerd, and we're like, and this is, you have to find, you know, the in-fisherman headquarters using a AAA map. That's literally how we were doing it. Yeah. You know, it's so stupid to think back to those days.
It's amazing.
Like, I was 17 and you were 15 or something, you know? And we found the in-fisherman headquarters on a Sunday coming back from a fishing trip, and with a station wagon, and parked in Ron Linder's parking spot and took a picture with a film you have to develop. You know, the whole thing is so stupid. Like the amount of work we had to go through just to get there and then take a picture and then wait 2 weeks to see the picture. You know, it's funny.
You had to develop it at the pharmacy. Wasn't that how you?
Yeah. And now I can just text it to you. I'm like, hey, remember this? You
it's
know?
amazing. Absolutely.
So great.
Yeah, I parked in Ron Linder's parking spot.
Yeah, it said reserved for Ron Linder.
And parked right there.
You're just sitting there with a big smile. You're just leaning on it, you know, like, Ron Linder's not here today.
I mean, it was like we had found Mecca. You know?
It really had.
It was. I
remember pulling up, and I was like, I remember writing them about an internship, you know.
Right on.
And I didn't even have an idea. I was just like, do you need an intern? Because I'll like clean the bathrooms or something. I don't even know how this works. And they responded to me, you know. Just
nice.
Like, well,
I mean, you know my internship story, right? Within Fisherman.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. That was interesting. Yeah, that was when I first had my revelation of outdoor videography is a little tougher.
It's not all glamour. Yeah.
I gotta say, Pete, this angle here is really terrible for this camera because it's really highlighting this missing tooth of mine. And as you can see I have an implant in there. It's soon I'm going to have a new tooth in there, Pete.
Look at you, Mr.
Remember when
Big
you
Shot.
punched me out?
Yeah,
And
you deserved it too.
Yeah. Anyway, I keep seeing. I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't.
From my angle, it's perfect because the mic is covering your face entirely. This couldn't have worked out better.
Perfect. Well, yeah, no, I tried to get an internship too with internship within Fisherman, and I kept pestering Jim Lindner, who is the head of video production there, because I was looking for a video production internship,
Right.
And I finally got a hold of him, and I remember talking to him. He sounded so exhausted. He sounded like he's like, yeah, we just got off the water after a four-day trip.
Right.
But he sounded way worse than that. Like, he sounded terrible.
We spent 4 days and we got one muskie.
Yeah, and he just now I totally identify with how he sounded.
Right.
I know exactly why he sounded that way.
You know that exhaustion.
Yeah, I know exactly what that exhaustion was. But a few more things here. Let's see here. I saw this, so I kind of consult the Target Walleye I get a Target Walleye newsletter. Also get a Bass Blaster newsletter. They're actually from the same folks.
Right.
And that's kind of how I stay up on what's going on in the fishing world for the most part.
Did they call our show like? Did they promote us at one point?
Yeah, no, I did a podcast before an official podcast like we have now. I mean, we're really cooking now, man.
Right.
But no, I talked. What's that?
You should be paying for this. If you're listening to this and not paying for it, you should feel blessed.
Oh,
because
yeah.
This is the kind of podcast that you're going to feel bad not paying for.
That's right. Especially, I mean, we're real here. I mean, we're getting real. This isn't something you're going to find on a what am I trying to say here, Pete? This is value that you're getting out of this podcast. Right. We're real. We'll tell you the straight dope.
We're not selling you anything.
We're not selling you anything except on Angling Uploaded, right, Pete?
That and hams, apparently.
And hams, exactly. We are, that's the kind of brands that we promote here. But I saw that. Okay, so we all know, like, a few years ago, Bass Pro Shops bought Cabela's, right? And I just saw on Target Walleye, Brett McComas there is the man responsible, a great guy. He's actually lives up in northern Minnesota, but he's the guy that puts that together, that newsletter. You should check it out. If you don't sign up for it, Target Walleye, I'm doing a great plug for him right now. But I read on there that Bass Pro Shops, who bought Cabela's a few years ago, which I can't even imagine how much that cost to buy Cabela's, right? They just bought Sportsman's Warehouse, which I was thinking at first, I was like, Tackle Warehouse? Tackle Warehouse is a huge, like, primarily for bass guys. It's a huge, like, West Coast kind of like. I think they do.
Thing, right?
Yeah. They're really good though. They're very.
Used them.
Yeah,
they do a good job.
So I'm less familiar with Sportsman's Warehouse, but Sportsman's Warehouse does do. They they have an online presence, but they also have like retail stores. So this is a new technology I'm bringing up here now, Pete. I'm going to bring an overlay up here of a screenshot I did, if all goes well.
It's new to us, probably.
New to us. Yeah, so this is from Target Walleye here. This came from Target Walleye. Bass Pro Shops is buying Sportsman's Warehouse. The merger has already been unanimously approved by the Sportsman's Warehouse Board of Directors and is expected to close in the back half of 2021. The deal is valued at around $800 million.
What?
Cash, no financing. It's straight cash. Can you imagine writing a check for $800 million? Is that how they do it?
This is Bass Pro Shops buying Sportsman's Warehouse?
Sportsman's Warehouse, not Tackle Warehouse. This is a different one, but they have like a number of actually retail stores, like box stores.
They have real brick and mortar stores.
Yeah.
Like where are they at?
I've seen some. I think I've seen some in Wisconsin. I'm pretty sure, but let me just. Yeah. So. So is there anything else I'm missing here? Yeah, comes three-ish years after Bass Pro acquired their top rival Cabela's for a cool, ready for this, $5.5 billion.
That's what they bought.
That's what they. Yeah, isn't that amazing? Yeah. So I mean, the way I look at it, it's like, there's competitors coming up. I'm sure they're seeing it as like, okay, Sportsman's Warehouse is kind of a potential rival. I don't know. I'd love to know what's going on there in the thinking of like buying these, these competitors. Like what's in the thought process of doing it, and then also how is it done? I mean, it's way over my my understanding is financial understanding as far as like, how do you go, okay, we've got Cabela's now, we bought them. Are they have they paid off all that debt after buying Cabela? Like, what is,
no idea.
You know what I mean?
I would guess yes, though.
Yeah, after 3 years, you think they're done paying?
They probably never went into debt. They just bought this place with cash. It says that?
That's what it says.
I mean, that's how that business works, You just build capital and then move your way into the competition. And in my experience with something like Bass Pro Shops getting bigger and bigger and bigger, usually means the quality or the customer service gets worse and worse and worse. You know what I mean by this?
Yeah.
It seems to be that, like, when Cabela's was an upstart, I was always impressed with their customer service and them going out of their way for returns and taking care of you. And then they get people in there that start crunching the numbers, and they come up with a real rigid set of rules, and then things seem to get worse and worse and worse. And who knows if that's the case with this situation, but generally speaking, I'm always trying to feed the little guys, even though I end up not doing that because Tackle Warehouse is a steady one for me. Catfish Connection is fabulous, by the way. If you ever want catfish gear, in the New England Fisherman, there's an article about the guy that started that.
Okay.
Actually, there's a big article about catfishing becoming mainstream with tackle sales.
Okay. Yeah, I can see that.
Nobody had a home base for it, so they're talking about mail order guys that are building catfishing from the ground up. And Catfish Connection is amazing because they send you this catalog that's like a half-inch thick.
Really?
They make you buy it. There's like, you can have this catalog. It's $5.
Yeah, that's how Bass Pro Shops. That's what it like. Bass Pro Shops had their they had their $5 master catalog, and I don't know if they're charging that for that anymore for Bass Pro Shops, but that was the deal to have that master catalog.
Reason, online, you would think online would be easier, but it's still more fun for me to page through a catalog. You know?
Yeah, it is. It's weird in that respect. You can almost get a better sense of the products, or for some reason you can see more. It just feels like you get an idea of like what's all being offered in a catalog.
You can flip open 2 pages of no-roll sinkers, and it might have 50 or 60 varieties in those 2 pages you're looking at. Whereas you're online, you're kind of pointing and clicking and missing things, and I don't know. It feels like a better way to kind of plan a strategy. Like, oh, I didn't know that exists. Like, I could use that.
Yeah, I feel the same way.
Yeah, when you're online, you're looking for what you know.
Right.
But when you have a physical catalog, you find what you didn't realize was going to make your fishing better.
Right. That's exactly right. That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
So that I thought that was a pretty interesting development, especially when you consider, like, for me, getting Bass Pro Shops is a big sponsor of a lot of of the Bass Pro Tour, and so the fact that in last year, it's always just kind of nervous, like as a freelancer, you're always kind of like, you just kind of have to sort of have your feelers everywhere, and just kind of, putting your finger up and testing the wind. How are things kind of just blowing around here, like
right.
And so with Bass Pro Shops, it's good, I guess, in a sense, is that, they're still a player, obviously, and they're still, it would appear that they have enough capital to do all this stuff and to continue to support tournament trails, that eventually all that trickles down to me, that I'm able to.
They have to be raging. I mean, they have to be. Just people are doing more. I bet they're doing 10-20% more than they ever have in their history.
Crazy, dude. It's so crazy.
It's so weird because a bunch of money is getting scooped out of people's income somewhere, and I don't understand what feeds that. You know, it's like there's, two economies. But
It totally is two economies. Like you hear about like the unemployment that's happening because of COVID, and especially like the service industry, the restaurants and the bars, which I'm super depressed about because I'm essentially a bar fly. We're both bar flies. Let's be honest.
I would give anything to sit at a bar and have a Bloody Mary and a beer.
Yeah.
Anything.
Yeah. And so you think about those. Those businesses that are just absolutely getting hammered right now, and you think that that's gonna, there's gonna be a cascading kind of effect. You would think, it's not showing it in the stock market. I think that's primarily artificial. Anyway,
Right.
It just gets pumped up with federal. The Federal Reserve does a lot to kind of, there's artificially kind of keep that going. But when you hear about everybody losing their job and high unemployment, it's just odd that, these bigger companies can just be doing. I mean, I'm thankful. Don't get me wrong. Those bigger companies are financing, or able to support, my clients essentially.
Right.
So I feel very lucky that it's still. The economy seems to be not as bad as I thought it was going to be, but
I guess it's an interesting thing, and for you especially, it was something you couldn't call. Like heading out of March and into April, we're like, well, where is this going to leave you? Like I remember us talking about it thinking, well, this is going to be weird. I don't know, is this good or is this bad? And for some reason, it just kind of kept you rolling along. Yeah,
I got really lucky with one of my clients is a college. I mean, I know you know this, but in St. Paul, and they fed me a lot of editing work because
all of a sudden remote was a big deal. All of a sudden,
that's right. And what was really interesting about it is I was like editing Zoom calls.
Yeah,
I mean, I was editing and video in a lot of respects. And it wasn't like I planned this necessarily, but in this day and age that we're in, video is, there's even more of a need for video, And so, because you're not only providing video to the TV, but you're providing any video now to the internet. So, and then it's just, I got lucky when shoots started just falling away for about a 2-month period. Things were dead shoot wise, and in that 2-month period, thank God, I got editing work that got me through. And then when shoots came back online, it actually it turned out, and I was still getting editing work. And then when the shoots then came online, so I had more editing work and then shoots, and I actually had a great year. So I would have never, when this COVID thing first started,
no,
I would have never, ever predicted that.
I thought your goose was cooked, so that's awesome that you were able to sort of string all that together and keep the boat dream intact, and, you made it happen. It's great.
Made it happen. And speaking of boats, we're almost wrapped up here, but I do want to cover one more thing, and I think this is the future, and I know there's going to be guys listening to this podcast that are like, You suck, man. I like my stinky gas outboards, and don't get me wrong. I got this new Mercury. It's a 200 Pro XS. Boy, she really does sound good when you start her up.
Yeah.
And I do love punching. She's got a hell of a hole shot, man. That thing, it goes.
What's a hole shot?
A hole shot's basically when you trim the motor all the way down, and you're getting ready to go, and you just punch the throttle down, and that boat gets up, and it just gets right on plane. That's the whole shot. And I've heard other people say that the motor is like great for it, and because this motor is on like all the Bass Pro Tour, the Cup event boats, Yeah. You see the motor everywhere now. That Pro XS motor, it's like one of the most common motors, and you hear a lot of great stuff about it too. And one of them is just the fact that it just gets out of the hole real quick, and it just goes. It's like boom, you're on plane, boom. It goes really quick.
What's the biggest one they make? Horsepower?
Oh, dude. I'm seeing guys now with 400 horsepower motors at walleye tournaments. I'm pretty sure I saw a guy with a 400. Was it a 400 or 350? Either case, it's ridiculous. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, I do.
And I'm not sure that I don't want to. I don't think I would ever be that guy. It's possible if I had that much money. Maybe it's possible. But I also am. I also kind of think like, when I see something like that too, I'm like, what is that guy? What is he overcompensating for? There is that part of my personality that comes out too.
Something there. Like that your motor feels bigger than me. I stand next to it. I'm like, oh my God, Like
when I know it's
my motor, I could drag it across the lawn at least. Like your motor, forget about it. That thing's, I'm not moving that thing if it's laying sideways in the lawn.
No, yeah, you need all kinds of special equipment to move that thing. It's crazy. But this is, I thought this was a pretty interesting. I found this, and I think I actually even. I was even toying with the idea of getting an electric outboard, believe it or not. I think I talked to you about this.
You did, but it was so new, you were a little concerned.
Yeah, this is a new technology, but I think this is where things are going. And this is from a company that I looked at actually pretty heavily in the summer of last year. So this is from the Bass Blaster newsletter. So I get the Target Walleye newsletter and the Bass Blaster newsletter. And so Washington electric outboard maker gets big investment, and this is what it's going to take. And I think we're so close. This is where we're going. And if this was a public company, I would invest in it right now if I were you. So it's not though, unfortunately. So it's named. So Pure Watercraft closed a total Series A financing. I have no idea what any of this means. Like like when they talk this way, like financial talk.
Right.
But this Pure Watercraft closed this Pure Watercraft is this electric outboard company out of Washington State. Closed a total Series A financing of $37.5 million. I have no idea what that means, but I guess they got a financing deal, $37.5 million, including a previously announced $23.4 million. The oversubscribed funding round was led by L37, a hybrid venture capital and private equity firm. L37 managing partner Randall Usury will join Pure Watercraft's board of directors. Dude, if I had any kind of means to get involved financially as an investment or I would be all over that, because that Pure Watercraft company, actually Troy Linder, who is is it Al's son? Do you know that?
I don't. I get lost. Is Jim a brother?
Maybe it's Jim's son.
But maybe is Jim a brother to Al and Ron?
I think Jim is Ron's son. I think Jim Lindner is Ron's son. I think.
Because he's a pretty young guy.
Oh, you got your phone on you right there? You can check it out.
I do.
But yeah, so this L37 managing partner Randy Ulster will join. Okay, yeah, so looks like it's basically this L37's first outdoor investment, but that Pure Watercraft company, they're the first real, like, I would say, electric outboard player. And obviously there's the big boys, Mercury and all those guys. Evinrude's no longer a thing, surprisingly, but like Mercury and...
Is Evinrude gone?
Yeah, they're gone. Which is shocking.
That is bizarre.
Yeah.
I haven't even thought of that.
Yeah, so...
It's like hams.
These bigger outboard manufacturers, I mean, they're gonna... at some point, they're gonna jump into this electric market. But this decade, we're now in 2021. I mean, but I see that this decade it's going to be there's going to be a ton of innovation with electric outboards, and probably within this decade you'll see fishing boats with electric outboards that go pretty darn fast. I don't know if they're going to compete yet within a 10-year time frame with a gas outboard, but there's going to be significant strides made, I think, in the electric outboard
Right.
In that electric outboard technology. It's going to be pretty cool to see what they do there. But if I could, dude, I would. I mean, any way to invest in that, because I just think it's going to go up and up and up.
There's always going to be dudes that want to hear their boat start up, you know, just like you were like, oh, hearing that boat's pretty fantastic, you know.
Yeah. Oh, he just, so Pete, and I'm going to be showing this picture. I'll bring this up. I'll put this in the, I'll bring this up in the, I'll edit this in for the video podcast, Pete.
I didn't know if you could show it from right there or not. I was curious.
If you actually, what you can do is email that to me right now, and I'll pop it in. If you email that to me, I can then, this software is pretty amazing because I can just pop in then that.
It's Greg owning Ron Linder's spot.
Yeah, so this is Pete just found the video of where I'm, or excuse me, from the picture of our youth when I took Ron Lindner's parking spot in Fisherman headquarters. So he's working right now to send this to me via email. And then I'll bring the picture in so you can see the ridiculousness of it. But yeah. So no, it's going to be 2021. I think this decade, the 2020s, Pete, it's going to be wild. This is going to be a wild decade, dude. There's UFOs happening. There's electric outboards happening. There's COVID happening. There's different new strains of COVID.
It's all happening.
There's race riots. There's a president that is he's refusing to leave office. I mean, I can't, as a news junkie, dude, I can't think of a better time to be a human being. I can't stop looking at my Twitter feed. I'm a news junkie, dude.
Yeah, there's a nonstop feed of chaos going on. At least you've got that. There's too much information, you know?
Yeah.
Is the problem.
It really is. But boy, if you can manage it, it's a lot of fun though too, because I'm like, oh, what happened today?
Right.
You know, but
well, you can get up and then just jump right into the storm if you want to, but I've been doing my best to avoid it as of late.
Yeah, you know? If you can't, you know, if you're not good with kind of managing and taking a time out, you know, and it all, I guess it all depends on your kind of tolerance level of just wild and just, I mean, many times just overwhelming news. But again, if you're a news junkie, it's really fascinating too what's been happening. So
decided to just shut that valve. I'm enjoying my quiet mind.
You're going to have to take the reins here for a little bit, Pete. The camera's on you. You've got the mic. I'm going to go into my
for me heading up north and sort of blocking out all the chaos is something I'm looking forward to. The cell phone not working, those wild spaces which are becoming rarer and rarer, I think are so valuable for people's minds if they could figure out how to experience them. For me, I'm going to come back from the Gunflint with a fresh mind, and I'm going to be hardcore ready to not pay attention to the world around me if at all possible. Not irresponsibly so, but I think it's a good thing to focus on. Life is short, you can't let the news get you down.
Oh, for sure. Well, here it is. I'll pop the picture up actually over there. It is. There it is. It's the picture's right next to you, Pete, on your right side.
Perfect.
And so that is me in Fisherman headquarters. We parked your station wagon, which looks like Chevy Chase's station wagon from Summer Vacation.
Wood paneling all the way.
And we put that we parked that sucker right in Ron Lindner's parking spot. And what's funny about it is his parking spot says reserved for Ron Lindner. And then it says Old Fisherman Crossing below that, So, and I was again. I love that I had this Columbia shirt with the front a largemouth bass looking right at you.
Yeah, it's a classic.
That was a classic. And what year do you think that was, Pete?
What are you? Are you 15?
Probably 15.
Than me. Yeah, you
I was
couldn't
probably
drive.
15.
So if we knew math, we could figure out what year we were born, and then 15 years later.
So I'm saying that was the late 80s, probably early 90s.
Right. Yeah, because I got a driver's license around 88-ish, I think.
Yeah, so I think that's probably a good image to kind of just end our podcast on, right?
I think that kind of says it all. That maybe you were a little too into fishing, and maybe still are.
Well, I think there's worse things to be into, you know?
I agree. Like cocaine. Or
right.
heroin,
I know. I mean, I know there's plenty of people that are fans of that, but I think it's probably best that I stayed away from those particular substances. But
it's exhausting, and it's more expensive than a boat, you know?
Right.
Eventually.
Right. Although, I'm beginning to. I do think you can. I don't know. There's a good argument that it's actually more expensive to have a fishing addiction.
That's true. But I'm also getting texts from my wife to go say goodnight to my son. So
gotcha. All right, buddy. Well, I've enjoyed it. It's great to be back in the saddle again, and thanks for just being who you are.
And we just went like 2 hours. Is that right?
We went an hour. Dude, this is what happens, man. This is what happens. We're this is what we do.
Ridiculous. All right. It was good talking. We will regroup next week. And we'll discuss serious fishing issues and also not so serious issues that have nothing to do with fishing.
I love it. We'll see you next time, folks. Folks, we don't say folks ever, do we, Pete? You go ahead and you do the outro on this one.
We'll see you later, folks.